All right. It's BK here with BSN Podcast. I'm sitting back at Calusa, so I'm here with Taylor and Ed again. Guys, I apologize for the last time of me screwing up. Unfortunately, nobody will know what we talked about that day, but we're going to talk about some of that stuff again. Again, you can follow the podcast at BSN Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and BSN with BK on Twitter. You can find all the episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, SoundCloud, all that stuff. So you will notice that there are commercials now at the beginning and end of the episodes. Spreaker has given me the opportunity to monetize my podcast a little bit. So guys, just please, you don't have to click the links or anything, but if you do, that's kind of cool, and they appreciate it. I don't know what the ads will be. So they don't tell me that. They just say, hey, we're going to kind of go with your demographic in your area and go from there. So there'll be like 30-second ads before and after the show. I chose not to have them in the middle of the show because fuck that. So, but again, here I am with Ed Paulsen and Taylor Pogue over here at Calusa. How you guys doing today, Ed?
Yeah, great. We were joking before this began. I was like, well, the worst thing is we get to hang out and talk for another hour.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, BK.
It's good to see you guys within a couple weeks of each other instead of months and months and months as we went before.
Yeah.
Way too long.
Yeah, and now that I'm mobile again, it'll be good until I have to take that few weeks off because they're cutting me open again. But
a little earlier in the day, so maybe a little less beer-fueled mayhem than our last podcast. Some of the details which shall forever remain secret.
Yes, and that's okay. Sometimes you got to keep things to yourself. Ed, why don't you tell me a little bit how you got into beer and how you started here with Calusa?
Yeah, I mean, I'd gotten into craft beer late in college, really like my senior year. I think we talked about it a little last time, but I wasn't particularly law-abiding. I just never really had anything that captured my imagination. I was like, wine was from a box, beer tasted just awful, like all the goodness of soda stripped away, but drank kind of like soda, and then hard liquor tasted like stuff I cleaned my bass strings with. I was like, what's the point of this? And I think we talked about it in a blog post that Taylor and I did together, and I had a Chimay Blue at a professor's party my senior year that just like completely turned my head. He had Harp and he had Chimay Blue, and I remember we basically just made fun of him for serving this Ponzi looking stuff with a cork and a wine glass. And the next day I just went to Fairway Market in northern New York and bought Heineken Dark, bought Chimay Blue, bought Blue Moon. That seemed like, I remember filling like a giant German mug full of Blue Moon. I was like, how many bottles does this take? And then getting kind of tipsy. One of my first times getting really kind of tipsy. But yeah, I was always traveling as a musician, living in different places, and craft beer was such a cool way to taste what was local in that area, bring back something cool for your friends, and also just get away from the TGI Fridays near your hotel and meet local people and go to cool parts of town. So it kind of just sidecarred on in life, but I was always fascinated, even from that first trip to Fairway, that first sip of Chimay Blue. I was like, how could this be made from the same stuff that's made from? In this way that beer was just a monolith to us, like taste, function, providence. But we know that's not true when we think about music and even cheese is an analogy I always like to make. You're like, how are these all made out of cow's milk? Or it was like, well, it depends on what it's for or where it came from, and we just know that. So I think that rediscovery, both in contemporary society and for all of us personally. So when I came to Sarasota, and I was in my early mid-30s, I was like, man, be curious about dipping my toe into this a little bit. Maybe just someone will hire me to wash kegs on the night shift or something, so I can just try this out. And I heard about Calusa opening and saw Jason Thompson, our head brewer, at a local bar wearing a Calusa shirt. And I just went right up, tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, "Hi." He's like, "Who are you?" He was actually with our friend Bill, and I think that it's like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And I was just like, I like beer, and we kind of just stayed a little bit in touch. And when the guys were opening, for better or for worse, they kind of thought of me. And they're like, "All right, well, we need someone to work in the public part of this, work in the tap room." I'm like, I have no experience doing that, but I think from the get-go, with the guys' vision for the place. And I think with the hiring decisions we made and just the kind of compass that guides us every day, it's like you got your mind and your heart in the right place as far as like what the product is worth, their dedication to the community, both locally and just the craft beer community in general. I love Calusa and my loyalty is here, but my real loyalty is always with, I think, the product and my belief in the power of that experience. I always joke around like, I'm not joking, but that beer is like an hourglass for a conversation or an experience that you're having with someone, an occasion, and so that's pretty much been, I think, one of our big guiding principles.
Fantastic, Taylor. How did you get into craft beer?
Yeah, I started when I was 21. Got a job at Total Wine locally, and walking in the beer aisle, I'm like, what the hell is all this stuff? And I'm like, all right, cool, let's try Woodchuck. That was like my first this doesn't taste like crap. It's sugary. It gets me drunk. I can drink it. I can handle it. I hated like hard liquor and stuff. So beer really was like more, attractive and stuff. So I would just walk down the aisle every day, grab a 6-pack of some random styles and just trying to learn it all. And then saw these guys in these blue work shirts walking around, stocking the shelves. I'm like, wait, there's like jobs in beer? I'm like, wait, duh. Like someone has to bring it here. Someone has to make it. Mm-hmm. And at that time, Sarasota didn't really have anything. So just kind of like going head first at Total Wine for a little bit until J-Dub's open, and then jumped in there and kind of the same thing. I'm like, I've never done this, but I'm not an asshole. So hopefully, I can do a good job working behind the bar and
stuff. That's still up for debate, by the way.
At least in public, know. But yeah, so just started, working behind that bar and kind of transformed and snowballed me into 2019 here at Calusa and just, doing the thing.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that you are the man behind the scenes here at Calusa. You do a lot of the social media work, and I know you work with somebody else on the videos and the photos.
Benny.
On Benny.
Shout out to Benny, Compound Skate Shop.
And Compound, absolutely. Love those guys. Hopefully we can get Compound on the podcast sometime too.
Yeah.
Just listen, guys. Hopefully. But, what has made you... I from what I see on social media, you guys have stepped the bar up, and you've made everybody else have to step their game up with the social media because the way you guys post, the way what kind of drove you to be in that social media aspect and how you're doing with it.
Appreciate those words. That's awesome. It just kind of I always had like a knack for it back in MySpace, and just like I don't know, just social media itself. And I don't know how. I guess I know how it works, but I don't know how it works. And just taking photos, making videos. It's always been kind of on the back burner. And then luckily I had the opportunity to just start doing it basically full time for, especially around a subject that I love is beer. So it's like the best of both worlds and just kind of trying to push myself, do different things and, see what happens.
Yeah,
testing.
Absolutely. And I know that you had had a video kind of go semi-viral when you were younger, right, on YouTube?
Yeah. Actually, we got on TV for it and everything. The Invisible Rope was actually shot here right off of Cooper Creek by Total Wine when I think it was 17. So like 10, 11 years ago. But that was, I think it's got like 3.5 million views.
That's crazy.
Pretty wild.
So it started early.
Yeah.
In some ways, it seems like a natural extension of kind of recreating the experience or bridging the gap when customers can't come to your location all the time, or maybe they don't live in the same place, or the social media aspect of it is not simply like, hey, we're releasing this beer, or tonight food trucks, or things that are just kind of like news. It's like really kind of like it welcomes people to the culture of your company. And I think as soon as brewery tap rooms, or the move from like a brewery being strictly a production facility with maybe a little tasting hatch where you could go and fill a growler or whatever and stand around and maybe share a quick pint. The building at Calusa is a wonderfully big, long, all the departments under one roof, big parking lot, and so you've really got the brain of the company, the heart of the company in the brewery, and the voice of the company and the face of the company in the tap room. And it's all kind of under one location in a way that I think is so naturally appealing to people who want to come experience beer or want to be civically proud of like a product and a company like that. And, it's easy for people to kind of decry social media or, people who are like, I don't like Facebook or whatever. It's like, well, no one's saying, I like to spend real time with people. You're like, well, no one's saying this is better than spending real time with people, but some of your best friends, like, you can't see them all the time. So you should give them a call. Shoot them a text message. Like, I'm sure people said the same thing about the telephone when it was invented. Like, I don't like talking on the phone. I like real conversation. You're like, yeah, but in between those visits, like in between the visits that you come to Calusa and you get the full color experience, as well as enjoying the beer out on draft or whatever, but you can interact with us. You can see what's happening. You can, Taylor and Benny, like their work is really given a life to the products themselves. Like you could imagine tasting these beers by just looking at the picture.
Yeah.
And I don't mean just because it's, hey, we got this beer, it's got peanuts in it, then you put peanuts in the picture. It's like, I mean, the way that beer for photography with the sizzling head and the dynamism of a pour, and like you can't help but almost taste it when someone's taking a big draft, like in a picture.
Absolutely.
So it's been a really amazing thing for the company. And so, as you said, BK, I think that the fame is really well deserved. But I think what Taylor said earlier reminded me of those of us who spent a lot of our life professionally or adult life outside of the industry, but enjoying it from afar. And you get into it and you're like, I want to give people the experience that I always wished I had.
Yeah.
As a fan, like, I want to know about the company. I want to, and that's I think, as I was saying earlier about our guiding principles, I think that's a real one too. Like, what would I have wanted?
Yeah. And then, that's something that you did touch on during our last conversation was, you want your beer tenders in the tap room and, your employees in the tap room to know about the beer themselves too, and not just, hey, what can I get you?
Totally.
And that's, I feel, is a big thing, especially with craft beer, is, when I go somewhere into a new place, that's, if I'm at a new brewery, not only do I want to look at your selection and say, okay, so I see you got lagers, you got your IPAs, but what's the special one? What's special about each one of these beers? Is it just something you guys made because you had time? Or was there a story behind that beer?
Yeah, or you're just trying to fill out a tap list. And I feel like a generation or so ago, beer bars, beer stores, maybe even breweries, I mean, there was this desire to kind of have a sense of quality or prowess or expertise by simply having something like encyclopedic. Like your beer list looks more like a phone book, just like a cross-section. Yeah. A beer store was just like, here's everything that's available in our market. Enjoy. Yeah. It's like, but that isn't that impressive. Like what's impressive is like something curated, like not the necessarily accordion takeout Chinese menu with like 1,000 items on it, but like you go out to dinner and there's like 5 thought out curated things that are unique to that place. Because you're right, if you just go to every brewery and it says IPA, porter, wit beer, that's just like, let's go on vacation. We could go to beach, mountains. It's like, well, where do you mean? Do you mean Siesta Key, or do you mean the Amalfi Coast, or do you mean like, it's like that matters, and like filling in all those details like really matters.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point with just trying to fill tap lines. I've seen it numerous times in this industry all over the country that people, they have 20, 30 taps, but they only brew 6 beers, so they take one beer and they treat it 15 different ways. Yep. And that's that's a whole
right.
I like pineapples and whatever.
Well, I think some of the modern goofiness aside, like a way to do that in a way that was historically more interesting. It's funny that IPAs have gotten down to such a narrow color palette at the moment when it was one of the really dynamic styles that craft breweries did, and not everyone did it. A lot of people specialized in it. But
so weird
about
to think of
about
now.
10 years within the last 15 years, let's say kind of at an apex around like 8-10 years ago, the Brewers Association had to scurry to kind of like get the style guidelines simply for judging homebrew competitions. And if you looked at it, I remember when they redid them in 2011, I think it was, and they really hadn't redone them since like 2004 or something. And Gordon Strong was talking about the IPA category. It was like Belgian IPA, white IPA, black IPA, red IPA, brown IPA, Imperial IPA, wood-aged IPA. And it was like...
I don't even think triple IPA was even a thing.
Well,
No, I think that came out more in like 2015 when they redid it then.
What's a triple? Is it?
Well, the triple IPA, Moylan's from California, their Hopsicle was one of the first ones. And then Devil Dancer from Founders in like the early mid 2000s. But Devil Dancer is still really more of what you consider a barley wine.
Yeah.
And Moylan's was in more of like the West Coast, because what do you call an IPA that gets to be 10%? They kind of made it up.
Yeah.
In the same sense that like, the Belgian Abbeys weren't really producing quadruples, because the people who made up the naming scheme at Westmalle of double and triple, they didn't make a quad. But then Chimay had their, what do you call this? Or what do you call the West Vladerens and Rushforts and stuff? So that was kind of made up. But then the divide between Imperial IPA and double IPA, as I started to understand it recently, is people are like, well, nowadays double IPA can be more like an IPA but just bigger, where Imperial IPA started to kind of head into the like American barley wine without the malt character. In a way. So there's now, because I always liked, maybe because I liked the abbreviation like IIPA, I just thought it looked real cool. Imperial IPA. It just sounded so much cooler than like double IPA. Because then you get people being like, oh, is this like double the hops? And you're like, no, that's just kind of confusing. But I had to kind of set myself right too, to be like, okay, Imperial IPA refers to this slightly more classic, maybe more West Coast geared barley wine-ish, and double IPA, and then again the kind of made up triple IPA. What do you call something that gets to over 10%? I don't know.
Double wine.
Well, yeah, but it reminds you of the, speaking of scurrying, the other scurrying that we had to do. What were we looking this up? 1994, Sam Adams Triple Bock, 17% whiskey barrel aged, and then following with the. Well, that was a little bit of a misnomer too. Even in the Great Beer Guide, Michael Jackson's like, it would be better described as a barley wine. This is not a bock. You're like, right. It definitely is not a bock. It's just fun to say, maybe.
Absolutely.
But and then the extreme beers from Dogfish Head, and then the kind of, we were joking like the strong beer races are like the chili pepper races. There's always a new hotter chili pepper.
Yeah.
And the people who are really into the thrill seeking about it are not really concerned with flavor anymore. In the same way that like, you're drinking like the 32-40% beers. That being said, have you guys ever tasted Sam Adams Utopia?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of compelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good.
Very cognac.
Yeah.
We had like almost like a vertical of them. Well, not 5 years, but it was like 3 years.
It was compelling. I mean, Triple Bock was polarizing. I mean, let's be honest. It tasted like soy sauce. It's like, and it was sweet, and it was, I remember thinking that blue bottle was so badass. It was like Darth Vader's little brother of the beer world. It's like, who's this skinny little dark bottle that's super evil? How did we get on that subject about IPAs? Oh, just doing well. But breweries wanting to fill out their list. It's like it makes more sense to like IPA, and here's an IPA where we tried a Belgian style yeast. Kind of pushing innovation, having choice by like innovating.
Yeah,
and even like I think the thing of putting a beer into a barrel was like a really special. Hey, let's try to do something uniquely American about this. Blake, one of our bartenders, and I were having this discussion. He's like, looked at this beer someone brought in and said American Sour Ale. And he said, what's that? What does that mean, in other words? And you're like, well, it's just that, the taking of a continental or a pre-existing thing and just kind of maybe altering it or funkifying it in some sort of a way that really, so he and I were talking about Russian River and putting, essentially Belgian-inspired sour ales like in wine barrels. You got a brewery, it's in Sonoma County. They used to be part of the Corbel Wine Group. Vinny grew up in a winery. It seemed like a natural leap. I was like, that's a good example of something that could be described as American. You know, like just no Belgian brewery would have really thought to do that.
Yeah. That American Mohawk, as you said.
Oh yeah,
before.
Yeah, with the American Mohawk. So I mean, there is that kind of like, you know what? This is jazz. This is something that's uniquely American. And Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, probably the best example. Like, let's make a European beer, but use all American ingredients and give it its own spin. So, you know, where things are headed, you know, as far as, like you said, the amount of variance, when everything's just like you said, maybe making a base beer and having variance, is that the same thing? We were
yes and no.
Yeah,
You know, it could be debated.
It's easy, and it's popular to kind of like lament certain like kind of low hanging fruit. Not to use that as a not what am I saying? Like, you know, not like low hanging fruit, like beers with lots of fruit. You know, it's kind of easy to say that, but we were talking about the parallels in craft beer and kind of with the coffee industry of the last like 20 years. Mm-hmm. Sort of people discovering that this commodity can also be really dynamic, you know, and there was a period when everyone was like, you know, triple spice mocha this with whipped cream on top. It's like, wow, look what you can do with coffee. And like, who thought that coffee could do this? And once you kind of get out a little of that adolescent surge, the amount of Americans who now know light roast, medium roast, dark roast, Americano, source, they, you know, even if you don't understand why, you know that there's different beans and different types of coffee. So the lasting effect, despite the kind of, you know, mushroom cloud of kind of fun wackiness that can happen, is like, wow, beer can be this really dynamic beverage with like lots of different flavors and providences and functions, and I think that people who are becoming of drinking age now are walking into a world where you can get Sierra Nevada Torpedo at a gas station, and it's just like it's part of them. So
when it first came out, we would have to search for it. You know, you had to go to the specialty stores basically to find it.
That's the joke. The weirdy beardies.
Yeah.
You know, like the guys who were the guys and gals, who were like home brewing. Like that was like crazy talk.
Yeah.
And like
bunch of nerds
owning a brewery. I think like the term microbrewery, which is really like microbrew, was what craft brew was known as for like 30 years. And it was kind of hip, but it was kind of stigmatized. Yeah. You know, kind of the weird stigma of like the natural foods market. People are like, oh, you go to the natural foods market? You're like, well, what's the other one? The unnatural foods market? Like that seems like the one that should be stigmatized. Yeah. You know, it's like, what? So, you know, and so what do we, you know, now just kind of craft brew, but as we said, like giving it a human and a local face. Where we started out, like what's something unique about what we do here? So,
yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's as the industry changes, you know, you're going to have those innovations, and you're going to have the also let's just throw a bunch of fruit in it and call it a day. You know, so that's, you know, going forward. You know, I know you guys take time and plan out. You know, Jason plans out the beers exactly how he wants them, and you know, I don't see you guys doing one beer and treating it 15 different ways. You know, there's always something different about each one that you guys do. And obviously bring back your other beers. Like, you know, Citroni is big, and you guys have those beers that you come back. I think you guys were just canning some Storm Rage today.
Yep. And Storm Rage and some dry hop pills.
So what a smell when you walk into the brewery.
Right?
Fresh
beer. I walked in right after they were
smell.
done canning, and I was like, oh, man, if I was here a half hour earlier, you know?
Yeah.
And I see the big craze, obviously, we kind of hit on it last time, was the hard seltzer thing. And to each is their own, and, you know, but when you start seeing people like, you know, Busch Beer that are coming out with the pumpkin spice latte that's 17% hard water.
Crazy.
Like, you see Natural Light, Natty. Do I really want a Natty Ice seltzer?
Yeah.
I'm not
Maybe.
even sure. I'm not even sure I see the connection.
Yeah, it's like the person that likes Natural Light. Like light is going to drink that seltzer.
Or like ordering a burger at a Long John Silver's or something. It's like, well, it just doesn't. I don't see the connection. Why call it Natural Light if it's not beer?
Right.
Because then it's just a brand. But what is the brand for? I thought you just sold seafood. It's like, no. whatever you want. I'm like, well, then you're
We got chicken tenders.
then
too.
you're whatever. Then you're whatever. You're not actually. I don't know. I guess that's kind of like the would you rather, like Taylor Pogue. Would you rather? Would you drink? I mean, wasn't that what you posed?
I have some in my fridge right
I was
now.
gonna say, was
Honestly.
that you posed last time, BK? You're like, would you drink this, or like, what do you think of this?
So I have had the natural ice seltzers, and they're way sweet. They're a little like it's more thick, like mouthfeel wise. It's not very like sparkling. I don't know.
Seltzer for the blue collar.
White Claw is my favorite.
Totally thick, 5 out of 5. What about
Too
BK? Have you had or seen the Pabst Blue Ribbon?
The coffee.
Coffee
I've
one?
seen it. I have not had it.
It's really good.
Have you seen it like poured into a glass though?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, have you seen it?
Yeah.
I remember my mind was blown when I saw Red Bull poured into a glass and it was yellow.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, like Red Bull? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that seems like a logical connection.
It should
Yeah.
be red.
Boy, that
You
was
can pick any color
that
you
was
want.
a super weird. It's like those bottles of chocolate wine. Have you ever seen those
Yes.
in the clear glass and they look like Yoo-hoo? and you're
Adult
like,
chocolate milk, Total Wine.
It's,
I know
it's,
all that
it's
shit.
the same thing as the first time I had a coffee blonde beer.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
You see
Yeah.
that?
I remember those.
Yeah.
Carton had a great one. Carton up in New Jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
never forget. Like somebody brought me a can of it, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" And I poured it, and I was like,
What the fuck is this?
"Yeah." I was like, "Why is this? It tastes so much like black coffee,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
clear."
Those
You
are,
know?
those are, there was a, there were, I remember
very bright.
it was like 04 or 05 at Wine Coop, depending on who you ask out in Denver. They had like a gold, or maybe it was even an IPA with coffee that was golden. And then, there have been several. I mean, I guess the Stone one was a really big one, the Blonde Stout. And it's just one of those things, speaking of weirdy beardies, and I'm someone who likes beer history, but the kind of guys for beer history that are like, well, stout just meant strong, so there were blonde stouts. I'm like, but in this day and age, if you bring out a stout and it's blonde, and it's not just like a novelty, you're just going to confuse the hell out of people.
Yeah, exactly.
You
You got a lot of explaining to do.
yeah, and it's not even like the kind of imitation crab at sushi places or something. It's like it's just
It's not K-Rab.
yeah. It's just gonna or chicken fried steak. I was like, wait, what? Or gooey duck.
Gooey duck.
Gooey duck. You're like, definitely not duck. Explain. Yeah, that is a weird one. We could do a whole podcast about like hits and misses in like beer branding of like weird. I know in college that was Tequiza and Miller Chill
Yep.
and all those things. You're like, who's buying this? Like,
And somebody bought it for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
yeah, but then you,
Those
but
are
that-
Big
but-
Daddies.
But then that's the thing. Then you
Everybody
gotta-
buys it to try it.
Yeah,
you know?
but you got to come up with a new thing.
Well, think about when Zima just came back out. Was it last year?
Yeah.
And how many people went crazy because Zima, they're bringing Zima back. Most of us that wanted to try Zima couldn't drink it because we were too young at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember drinking it in high school and even
Yeah.
before that with like Jolly Ranchers in it. And
Oh, it was a big illicit drink.
Yeah.
When I was in the early '90s. My first. Okay, here's a good one. What was your first illicit beer? Like, do you remember like something not just like a sip of whatever mom or dad were drinking, but like you knew it was kind of bad.
A beer?
Let's say for argument's sake, beer, not like the kind of wine that you snuck from like the vacuum sealed bag.
I remember in high school, I mean, I'd had beer a few times prior to that, but really remember having friends, older friends of mine, and my brother's 10 years older than me, so he's going to be mad if he hears this, but he used to purchase for me all the time. And I knew there was a party coming up, so I'd have him get me 2 40s of Bud Ice.
Bud Ice.
It does sound cool.
Yeah, I'd have Bud
I'll get
Ice,
some
and
ices,
the bottles
man.
had like this little like crystal looking glass to them, so kind of cool. I had always had that, and I always had a pint of Southern Comfort. So that was the
pint?
backpack, a pint,
Yes.
Whoa.
and a 2 liter of Mountain Dew.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
dude.
So I would make Scooby Doo's. People would be like, "Oh, I'm out of beer. I'm out of beer." I'm like, "Well, my party's just starting. My beer's gone, and now I'm having SoCo and Mountain Dew."
We should have ended with you.
Mine was probably Steel Reserve.
What is Steel Reserve?
Steel
is it malt
Reserve.
liquor?
It's a malt liquor.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
like 8%, 8 or 9. It's up there.
Sounds fierce.
We would play Flip Cup in high school, and with that, and you'd buy 4, and you were pretty good to go.
Wow.
Now thinking about King Cobra was another one that was an illicit shitty beer that I drank.
Yeah.
That was
Sparks. I drank a lot of Sparks.
What the hell is Sparks?
Sparks was like an energy alcoholic malt liquor, and it turned your tongue orange.
It was
So,
like Four Loko before Four Lokos, I think.
all
But they
the
were like,
feels.
you could get.
It did it all.
You would buy 8 of them, and you would be so drunk.
Deep fried to perfection.
So drunk.
It really had it all. Okay, we should have started with me. I feel like all of my stories are just like, it's like one time I took a sneak of beer. It's like, what? That was not mine.
Just a nip.
Mine was growing up in Rochester, New York, was a Dundee's Honey Brown.
Ooh, that stuff's good.
Like we had this like little 40 area that was like a giant pine tree with like a bed of pine needles, and we'd sometimes hang out there. I remember there was like one beer for like a ton of boys, and we all like, oh, let's try this. And I was like, wow, Honey Brown, that sounds delicious. It's like, and then you're like, neither honey nor brown. Discuss. It's one of those things like, it didn't taste like honey.
I remember drinking Honey Brown.
It wasn't particularly brown. I'm like, I thought it tasted terrible.
My
yeah,
first
I
sip
had
was
a buddy
Red
named
Bull.
Brett that used to drink that all the time.
Like say like 93, when I was in middle school, that was also the kind of the dueling like Red Dog and
Red Dog was
Wolf.
my first beer I've ever had.
Was it Red Dog and Red Wolf?
I believe you are correct.
But it was just one of these things where like they looked so badass, but like everything inside was just like the same. Like this is barely like Coke versus Pepsi.
I remember my dad used to drink Red Dog for a short amount of time, and we had like Red Dog signs and stuff in our basement.
My
had
dad
the
had
man
like a
cave.
sweater, I think, of Red Dog.
There's actually, I don't know if it's still there, but Tap 72 down the road still has a Red Dog neon.
I don't think it's still there. I was there a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh shit.
It might have
Surely
gotten taken
someone
away,
lifted
but
it.
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I know Richie, one of the guys who's proprietor of Linksters and Tap 72 and all that. Pretty sure that he had a role in keeping that around. So
I saw it, and I was like, holy shit.
I tried to buy it when they first opened. I was like, dude, I'll give you $1,000 for it. I don't care.
Well, what you were saying earlier about just kind of making new beers, and in this example is like there was tequila, then there was the Bud one with ginseng, and then there was there's always going to be something new because it's like that's their whole plan. Just like kind of you just keep doing new things. People get tired of coming up.
Bud Light Orange.
Yeah, well, the one. Okay, I just I thought this was so funny. Where there's a billboard on 301 here in Sarasota that had a thing for the new Bud, like the orange and whatever, and the tagline just said, "If you like juice, this is your beer." And again, that was just like one of these, like, if you like seafood, eat the Long John Silver's hamburger. You're like, wait, I'm not sure I see the connection here. And it was one of those things of like, sometimes when people come in, they'd be like, wow, this beer, I want something like really, really light, really fruity. And I was like, I think what you want is lemonade. It's like, oh, it's really hot outside. It's really refreshing. I'm like, yeah, that's lemonade. And it can be beer. Of course, beer can be very quenching and refreshing, but just one of these things like, you're at the zoo and you're like, great, when's AC/DC go on? You're like, you're at a zoo, sir. You're like, yeah, but I feel like listening to rock and roll. So give that to me.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not sure. And so, one of the things in craft beer right now with, there's more breweries than, people talk about how many breweries there were before Prohibition, or in the 19th century. But, it's such a thing to just constantly be making new beers. And your point earlier, BK, about, like you said to Taylor, like, yeah, but you guys got like a rotating cast of about half a dozen great rotating IPAs, half a dozen great double IPAs, and then like a couple big stouts, a couple different ones. And like, you do get to make new beers, but you got to bring back some of those brands too. So it's new and it's dynamic, but if you're always making new beers, I was at a brewery, they had 17 beers on the menu, and I'd never been there. And I'm like, hey, last time I was here, I had such and such a beer. And they're like, oh, we don't have that anymore. I was like, we don't make, that was just a one-off. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we do one-offs too. And they're like, well, we don't really ever do the same beers. We might have beers in like the same style. So, but then I'm like, well, but
there's no core.
I bought tickets to. Like, if like Billy Joel didn't do Piano Man, you might be kind of ticked. You're like, I don't want to just hear these. I want to hear new songs.
Yeah.
But I want it to be like, I want to go to a restaurant. You can have specials, but I really want my other thing to be there too. Like, and I think it's important for us to keep our one foot on each side of that.
Balance it out.
Yeah, because like you can't just survive on a heritage brand. But if you have nothing to go back to, your business model is we only make new beers. Then people can just, they don't have to come by.
Forget.
They come by like every 6 months. If they come by every week, it's always new beer. So there's no urgency to come. It's not really vibrant. You're not creating a brand or a culture. So I think that's something again that we all try to be mindful of here. Plus the beers are so damn good. Sometimes we got to bring that back.
Yeah. I know that I've been in places where we brought it back strictly for the employees because they wanted it. You know? Yeah. And there's also been beers that only the employees would drink because other people didn't like them or they're too strong.
Around for the whiskey. For the boys.
Whiskers for the boys. Our good buddy Tommy made a was that a wheat wine?
A wheat wine.
And we call it King's Whiskers. And it was, I think we drank like a sixtel one night.
Pretty sure. Yeah. He would just like walk in and he's like, around for the boys. And I'm like, I'm already pouring them, buddy.
Yeah, we just do 2 ounce or 4 ounce shots of it all night long.
Wow.
It was definitely a fun one.
Yeah, no one ordered it, but we drank it.
We definitely got through it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Had to get it off the line. You know, it was put on something new. Speaking of getting drunk, most embarrassing drunk moments. Anything you can think of?
Luckily, I've forgotten them all.
I don't know if I even have a good one, but I feel like we should start with me because my story is inevitably going to be the lamest. And it's usually like one of those things. Like I was the kid when we were doing prank calls when we were young. I wasn't doing them. I was just on the phone in the other room to listen because I was too shy to actually do anything. So it's like we were joking last time about the. My introduction to the Power Hour while visiting my friends who went to an actual college. I graduated music school with 40 kids, and like going to like high school I had like over 500 kids, but I wasn't doing anything, crazy. So I took the train north of Manhattan to Poughkeepsie to visit my buddies, and they were probably also pretty nerdy. So I'm not sure we even really knew how to party, but they were like, yeah, Power Hour. And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh, the only beer that we had was Sam Adams Winter Lager. And it was this brown, fairly, not strong, maybe it was a 6% or something. We got 15 minutes into like a shot every minute for an hour with 3 of us. And we were just like floating away. Like it felt horrible.
It's the Power Hour thing. I did it once and it was so rough. You're like, oh, like 1 ounce of beer every minute, that's easy. Yeah, right.
Then the foam builds up.
Oh my god!
I feel like by the time you've recovered from the first one, it's already time to take another one. It's like water torture, or something. It was horrible. And that was when I heard about again, this is me on the other line during prank calls, but like the Edward 40 hands and the Wizard.
Done it.
Yeah.
The Wizard staff. Like I think that stuff is hilarious. Yeah. And usually it's like if I see my pants on the floor en route to the bed, inside out, I know I had too much to drink the previous night.
It was either a great night or a really bad night.
But there's just this kind of like general tumble. So like for the first breadcrumbs or like keys
your
on the floor,
your wallets,
then pants, then shirt, and then flop.
Yeah,
and then I was or the evidence of like crumbs or tremendously huge empty bottles or empty bags of pizza rolls, or a story for one of my really good friends that I loved was I came home and I was supposed to be home like way earlier, so he had gotten started drinking, and this is in Pennsylvania, you could only buy beer by the case, and so this was like he had bought a case of Bell's Hell Hath No Fury, which throw a little shout out here for Larry Bell anyway, is that he had a great quote of like, don't worry about brewing to style, worry about brewing with style. And they don't advertise it as such, but Hell Hath No Fury is like a Belgian double, but it's made American in the sense that it has a bigger degree of roasted malt, so it's actually got this kind of continental. Dark malts are not as roasty as what you're going to see when you think of porter stout. So this beer is like 8%. It's pretty strong. And so I come home and my roommate's been waiting for me. So he had gotten started on this case. I can walk through the door. I immediately see he's watching Ocean's 11, his favorite movie. He's seen it 1,000 times. And then he's like, where are you? You're supposed to be home hours ago. And I was like, I've been drinking all this. And I look, I'm like, what's that on our coffee table? And there's this psychic-sized ball like on our table, like a crystal ball, but it's all like metallic and rough textured. And I'm like, what is that? And I look, and there's all these empty bags of individual Reese's peanut butter cups. And so he just been watching this movie he's seen a million times, destroying these like 8% beers and destroying candy to the point where I'm like, we got to hang on to that thing. Like that's
we got to add to that.
Yeah.
We need another case of Reese's.
So
Taylor?
So mine, I get. This is all right. I'll say I want to tell you a story about when I shit behind my minivan. So
That's
where
a
we get our
good.
PG-13.
Let me preface this with
PG-13
Taylor
rating.
shit behind a minivan.
That
some
could be the
people
title
know,
of the podcast or the title of your autobiography.
a lot of
might
people
be.
know this story, and I'm
me.
not really ashamed to say it anymore. But when you gotta go. Nature calls. Ding ding. So get home one night and really drunk. I wasn't driving, luckily, so I was in the passenger seat of my car. My minivan at the time, white minivan. I think it was white. I don't know, before.
Creeper.
Not for long.
Yeah, before or after it was spray paint or whatever. And get home, I remember that, and then I wake up lying on the ground next to my van, and my shirt's off, and we have like shell. It's not like a driveway, it's like shell. So there's like shell sticking to my arm, all my legs, and I like open my eyes, and I have a splitting headache, totally like, it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. And I'm just like instantly start puking again. So I roll over and I'm just like, oh, and I just start throwing up again. And then I feel a little, when you're sitting in a Chevy, you feel something heavy, it's coming out the other end. And so I puke and stand up, and I'm like, oh, fuck, this isn't going to be good. And I just get completely naked in front of my house, walk to the back of my minivan, squat, put my hands on the bumper, and just let it rip. Just a nice pile of poo.
Hey, I guess you gotta go.
5 a.m. Listen, I live down the street from a high school, so if it was even relatively in school, I might have got arrested. But walked back in, grabbed my clothes. I'm like covered in shell, like vomit, and just
Shell, vomit, and
dude,
shit.
disgusting. And I walk in, and Ashley's getting ready to go to work. I bust through the door, and I'll never forget the look at. She was like walking from like our bathroom to the living room or whatever. She turned, she's like, what in the fuck? And I was like, you left me out there. I like just woke up.
How could you?
Yeah, I just shit, dude.
It's all your fault,
dude.
Wow.
I drop all my clothes, walk to the bathtub, just take a shower, and then
Slept for hours, I'm sure.
yeah. But that was after bottle share. I think at Kyle's house.
This was
good.
in your adult life?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought this was like when you were a kid.
This was probably 3 or 4
like 2 or 3 years ago, I believe.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
No, this wasn't like no. This
wow. That's
this was recent.
This was being old enough, allowed to drink at the bar.
Oh
and-
wow. How about you, BK?
Well, I did kind of tell my story last week how I got really drunk in downtown Disney and fell down and lost my foot. So we'll go beyond that. We were talking about power hours. I worked in the Gulf Gate area for a long time, and our power hour was, all right, it's 1:30. We have 45 minutes to an hour to drink. Let's go to as many bars as possible and doing shots. So did that one night, did shots all over, and was with a couple of buddies of mine who were corrections officers at the time. And they were like, have fun, get get drunk. We're with you. We're pounding back with you. So do that, and 2:30 rolls around. I decided to go to my car and take a little nap. I wasn't going to drive. I knew that at the bar I worked at, I could always go in there after close and hang out and sober up or get a ride home from somebody else. And I was like, I'm just going to go to my car and take a nap. I remember going to my car. It was probably 2:15, 2:30. Getting in the car, in the passenger seat, mind you, and realized like I'd had way too much Jack Daniels, and it was coming back up. So opened up the door, threw up a couple of times, and decided that I probably should eat something because I hadn't eaten in a long time, and maybe that would help a little bit. So, Munchies 420 was there, so I called them and ordered a sandwich and said, bring it over to the bar. I said, no problem, BK, we'll have it over to you in, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. So I get up out of the car, go to walk into the bar, and it's, probably 3 o'clock, 3:30 at this point, and forgetting that I threw up outside of my car, I slipped and fell in my own puke. And luckily I had some clothes in the car, so I changed my shorts because they were covered in vomit. I remember walking in the front door of the bar, and everybody was like, "What are you doing back here?" And I was like, "I need to go outside." And I just walked out to the back door and laid on a picnic table for like an hour. And that was a good one. I've been known to fall down a lot when I get really hammered. I actually face planted in front of a police cruiser on Gulfgate Drive.
Oh my gosh.
That
was a good one.
sounds so classic.
And he pulled into the parking lot after I got back up because I had a couple friends with me. So they scooped me up. We walked into the bar and I did another shot. And he walked in. He goes, "I saw that fall. You okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good to go, man. I don't know. I just tripped." I was not okay at all. But I played it off pretty well. No, I played it off pretty well. I guess it's better than eating a joint when you're getting pulled over because I've done that before too. But, that's those are stories for another time.
Yeah.
Ed, we've talked a few times a little bit about your music background and stuff like that, but what people don't really know is that you are super into food and drink as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And music, obviously. We've done the music thing. We did a little quiz before, but we're gonna leave the music one for our next chat because hopefully, I know Taylor was talking about some about Ed's porch, and it's a good place to sit back and have a beer.
# beer porch. The
Yeah,
beer porch.
And I think that maybe one of these times we could all get together and do a little podcast on the beer
that'd be a
porch.
blast. Absolutely.
And maybe we'll save some music stuff for that.
Well, actually, you and I both have music backgrounds, so that'd be a good one to incorporate a little bit. Music and beer definitely go together.
Absolutely.
And
if you don't mind a cigar or two, I always have a good selection of those as well.
Cool.
So, but let's do a little food and drink trivia with you.
Okay.
I got like 10, 15 questions here, and we'll see how it goes. It's general food and drink. Oh, phone's ringing.
Message.
Message.
Food and drink trivia.
Somebody's calling in. So let's just go a couple of questions and see what you can come up with here. And these are general food.
Yeah,
drink.
I have no idea what these
No,
are. So
exactly.
We'll see.
And I just pulled up this random website to have them. So it seems like most of them are about states or countries and their national dishes,
Okay.
or first foods of that state.
Okay.
What is the state dessert of Arizona?
Oh, I don't know.
Can I guess?
Do you know?
Go ahead.
This needs
Go
to be a team effort.
All right, what was it?
The state dessert of Arizona.
Cactus salad.
It's a lane cake. I have no idea what the hell a lane cake is, but it is. What is the national spirit of America?
The national spirit of America.
I'm not talking about bald eagles.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I want to say something like bourbon, but I'm going to guess it might be. Well, no, I guess.
Vodka's Russia.
Yeah, but vodka is the most. That was always one of my questions when I like going to a liquor store and you're just like, shooting the shit with like the poor person at the counter. And I was like, hey, so what's the best seller? I've done that a few times just for fun. And they're always like, vodka.
Yep. Smirnoff.
No matter what, no matter how high class it is, what's the thing that sells the best? Vodka.
When I was at Total Wine, we had facings on each shelf. I think Smirnoff had 20 facings.
Yeah, I believe
and
it.
we would have to stock it every
As a bartender
Wow.
coming up, when I first started bartending, there was only a few flavored vodkas out there.
Yeah.
And then Three Olives came out with the Dude and all this other
Yep.
stuff, and then Smirnoff kept adding more flavors, and Sky had their infused beer or infused vodkas, and it gets to the point where it's like, all right, you know what? Yeah, Absolute. The only Absolute flavor I ever enjoyed was the pepper one.
pepper one. I was, dude.
It made great Bloody Marys.
Who
Other than that,
made the bacon one about 10 years ago? Do you remember that? It was like BAKON or something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Now there's like peanut butter
Friends of mine
vodkas
were
and-
so excited. They were like, let's take a shot. And I remember taking one, and it tasted like Bacos. Like, it tasted like...
You had that crunch. You're like, what the
It was.
Aren't Bacos vegan, by the way?
I believe they are. I think it is textured vegetable protein.
Yeah. Liquid smoke.
Gosh, I mean, yeah. So in terms of volume, you want to say vodka, but a unique spirit to like, in the
National
same sense
spirit.
that like, it's obviously it's Scotch in Scotland, it's gin in England, stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe bourbon and moonshine are the only two I can really think of that are kind of uniquely American.
It is bourbon.
I was gonna
Okay,
say
so
bourbon.
you're
yeah,
correct
bourbon
there.
whiskey. Okay.
In 1963, which state sold the first fried dill pickle? In 1963.
Okay, I would guess it's like somewhat food obsessed, food novelty obsessed, and probably of Germanic descent. So probably Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Taylor, would you like to throw a guess out there?
Some Midwest.
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
The answer is Arkansas.
Oh, man.
Fried dill
right.
from Arkansas.
Fried dill.
First fried dill pickle in Arkansas.
I was thinking, too, because dill is such a ubiquitous Scandinavian herb that it would be like Minnesota or somewhere where there's a lot of Scandinavian.
Well, apparently they love their fried pickles.
All right,
in the
they
South.
like their fried pickles. It starts getting hotter. You got to cool down with some pickles.
What is the national dish of Germany?
The national dish of Germany? I don't know. I would guess like Sauerbraten or Schweinehaxe or maybe just, well, I mean, currywurst is a really big thing in Berlin particularly. Or maybe just sausage straight up.
Pot roast.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Sauerbraten is kind of like,
Yeah.
All right.
What is
dish.
an Indian dish but the national dish of England?
Oh, well, chicken tikka masala.
Boom.
Yeah,
Nailed
that's,
it.
That's,
Nailed
that's
it.
an
It was
English.
a quick
That's,
one.
that's an English dish. Yeah. Uh-huh.
For sure.
Yep.
Stampot tastes best with...
What?
Stampot tastes best with...
A sphincter says what? What? Exactly.
Rookworst.
What is
Whatever Rookworst is.
Okay, I don't even know what Stampot is.
I have no idea.
Sounds some Asian.
Next.
Which soft drink was originated in North Carolina? Very popular soft drink.
North Carolina. Is it Pepsi? Is it
North
Pepsi?
Carolina.
Is it
Raise
Pepsi?
up.
Which is is it Pepsi that has the headquarters in Atlanta?
That would
Coke.
be Coke.
Is it Coke? Okay, so
I have a guess. I think.
North Carolina. I don't know. What do you think, Taylor?
I think Dr. Pepper.
No,
It's-
that's Texas.
It's actually Pepsi Cola.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Wow.
Pepsi Cola.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper is Texas. Actually, my same roommate, might as well tell him who it is, my beloved buddy Barney. Maybe he'll listen to this. And Barney and I were on this road trip and to Michigan. Ended up visiting a bunch of cool breweries. Had a shout out to Bell's earlier. There's no coincidence. He grew up in Chelsea. So we drove for like 5 hours.
I grew just north of Chelsea.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he gets this new... Barney's got a soft spot in his heart and pocketbook for, like, beat-up old Volkswagens. Kind of fixes them up. So we got this car, take a 5-hour road trip, and I was like, yeah, man, I got some CDs for us to listen to. I mean, this was the mid-2000s. And he's like, oh, I didn't install the stereo yet. I'm like, what are we going to do? But we live together. There's nothing we're going to talk about that, like...
Did you guys play I Spy?
No, yeah, it was like 20 questions. What we're going to do? So, he was a bit of a road warrior at the time as well. So I get into the passenger seat, and it's like a ba-dum ball crawl of like empty soda bottles. It's just like empty, like those like wide mouth, kind of bullet shaped.
Oh, the big, like
those
32
those big
ounce.
gulp looking things. So, again, we're not telling you anything new. I mean, so eventually I'm like, pick up this empty thing of Dr. Pepper. I'm like, so Dr. Pepper is basically like cherry Coke, right? He's like, no. I'm like, well, I see that. Questions, comments, dial 1-800. So I call on my very advanced cell phone. And this guy answers. Barney's just laughing his ass off the whole time. Can't even believe this is happening. But I'm like, hey. He's like, hello. I was like, Dr. Pepper, that's basically cherry Coke, right? The guy's like, well, no, he didn't seem that passionate about the product because I could tell he was reading it off a computer screen. But did say that, it has this secret blend of spices, and it's named Dr. Pepper not for pepper the spice, but because it was after a doctor in Texas where it originated whose last name was Pepper.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with pepper the spice. Short story long.
I mean, you think about it, there's that song, Doctor, Doctor, and they kind of used it for Dr. Pepper commercials back in like the early 90s.
Yeah,
So
but
okay.
he did tell me that Dr. Pepper aficionados get it from Texas where it's made with real sugar.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Or there at least is available at that. Yeah.
Name the state which is famous for their third largest production of juicy peaches.
Third largest production of peaches?
Yes.
So
Juicy peaches.
Juicy peaches. Dude, so juicy. 5 out of 5. Well, Georgia has got to be number one. So
Allegedly.
And then what else? What other state? It'd be Alabama or South Carolina.
It's actually Georgia.
Oh.
Apparently, there are 2 states more peachy than Georgia.
Huh.
What was that thing that it was
It's like saying Florida
Either that
has
or
the
that's
sun.
just their third largest production
Oh, that might
in the
be it,
state.
'cause
Because Coca-Cola is probably number 1.
and
true.
and Jimmy Carter's peanut farm.
There you go.
Peanuts.
Peanuts.
What is the state vegetable of Oklahoma? Taylor?
Fucking okra.
No.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Oh, that's built
Oh,
in.
Oklahoma.
If it's not, they need to change it.
State okra.
Gosh, what would be a vegetable? In the Southwest, vegetables, it's really, really arid. So
Corn.
Well, you know what? We're originally really, really
Tiger.
arid is tomatoes. We're supposed to, are grown really in arid places.
Sweet potatoes?
No, I don't know.
The answer is watermelon.
Oh.
Watermelon.
Watermelon?
Yeah.
Watermelon.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the big debate. Is it a fruit or is it? It's a vegetable.
Is it?
Come on, it's got seeds. In 1930, which food made its debut in Pennsylvania?
Oh, I should know this.
You should know this. You are from
Which
the
food
P.
is it? Is it?
PA.
Is it Hershey chocolate?
No.
Which food?
1938?
In 1930, which food made its debut in Pennsylvania?
Goddamn. I'm going to say one of my favorite things coming out of there.
Oh.
There's 2. Martin's potato rolls.
It's probably a Philly
or chips.
cheesesteak.
Philly cheesesteak.
Ah.
Philly cheesesteak.
So yeah, we were thinking too low on the totem
yeah,
pole.
You're thinking specific items.
Yeah.
there.
Because I was about to say scrapple, but that's got to be older than 1930.
Yeah.
Name the main ingredient
Cheesesteak.
of mince pie.
Okay, so mince pie, like in Britain, is like fruit. It's not meat.
It's dried fruit.
It's dried fruits. Yeah, it's confusing.
I was like lamb.
yeah, we were just talking about gooey duck. Yeah, I know. I was like mince pie. Man, I love like Jamaican beef patties.
Yeah.
No.
Name the only
pasties.
U.S. state which grows coffee beans.
Oh, Hawaii.
Easy one. Name the national drink of Scotland other than whiskey.
National drink of Scotland.
It starts with the letter
Water? No.
Starts with what
I.
letter?
The letter I.
I.
And there's a hyphen in there.
Ices?
The national drink, ice cream. No, I don't know.
It's Earn Brew. Earn Brew, apparently, is the national
like
drink of Scotland other than
tea?
whiskey. Possibly.
Iron Brew? That was like with Steel Reserve, one of Taylor's favorites. It was a less successful Steel Reserve.
In 1919, Florence Cafe Cassoni created which cocktail drink?
Is that a gal's name?
I believe it's actually a man's name, but yes, Florence Cafe Cassoni created which cocktail drink in 1919?
Which cocktail in 1919? So it's something Italian.
a classic. It's a
something,
classic.
Something Italian?
You could definitely go with that.
Mike, how is your cocktail history, Taylor?
How's your cock history?
About 3 inches? Oh.
Oh, no, that's like average,
Zing.
right? An Italian cocktail.
Starts with the letter N.
And a Negroni.
Negroni, absolutely.
Nice.
Yep, not in my 3-inch wheelhouse.
In 2009, which food item
Love
declared
Negronis.
as the nation dessert of Delaware?
The national dessert of Delaware? Wait, national dessert of Delaware. That doesn't make any sense. The official...
It says, in 2009, which food item declared as the nation dessert of Delaware? But I'm sure they assume it's national, and this is just a spelling error.
Twinkie?
Peach pie.
What's with all these like weird peach questions?
I don't know. Like I
Okay.
said, I just pulled this out of nowhere, so...
Wait, wasn't it? Oh, I'm thinking of the Family Guy. When they go to the old Twinkie factory, but that's in Rhode Island.
Yeah. That was a good episode, actually.
Yeah.
Two or three more, and then we'll get out of here. Name the most iconic food item in Chicago.
Probably either deep dish pizza or the Chicago hot dog.
Yeah, deep
Yeah, I was
dish
gonna say
pizza.
hot dog.
Yeah.
What delicious thing is illegal to sell in Newark after 6 p.m. without a doctor's note? I don't know if this is still true or not.
Do you remember that? Well, it was the second episode ever, I think, of No Reservations when Anthony Bourdain went back to New Jersey where he's from, and they had that thing called the Ripper, the deep fried hot dog. And it was like talking about how it splits and cracks, and like basically drunk people are stuffing this scalding hot fat into their mouth, and how it's like actually really precarious. I want to believe that that's it, but otherwise I don't know.
It's apparently ice cream.
Without a doctor's note?
Yeah, apparently it is illegal to sell in Newark after 6 p.m. without a doctor's note. Now, this could be an old thing. Who knows? But
unbelievable.
Yes. And the last one. What is the national dish of Italy?
Wine.
It's actually 2. They actually list 2 on here.
I don't know. I mean, Italy's a big country.
Right.
There's a lot of different... I mean,
not to be confused with Sicily either.
Yeah, I know. And you want to say, pizza, you want to say spaghetti.
Well, I will say that pizza. It says this one and pizza, so I guess they're kind of tied.
I don't know. I mean, you want to say like risotto, or like depends on what part of Italy you're talking about.
But apparently, it's a national dish, so it's national dish everywhere.
Everywhere.
And when I think pizza in Italy, I think basically like Napoli and that.
Yeah, like the flat.
I don't know. What do they say?
Ragu alla bolognese.
Bolognese? Yeah, but I mean only in Emilia-Romagna. But hey, man, that's an awesome food. So that's like the spag bowl, spaghetti bolognese. Like, there's another like tikka masala kind of like British thing of like tomato sauce with ground meat, and people get really into it. But it's that thing you can find all over Europe. If you never know what to eat, I actually remember a really good one my buddy and I had in Belgium when I was like, I didn't know what to order. I was like, oh, spaghetti bolognese. But in Britain, they'll just call it spag bowl.
Spag bowl.
Just spag bowl. They like made it theirs.
Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. That's about all the time we have for today. Taylor Pogue, thank you for coming out and being here again.
Oh, yeah.
Ed, appreciate you as always.
Beer porch.
Beer porch. Let's do it. We're going to make it happen.
Yeah, because I mean, I'd love to rack your guys' brains about,
random stuff.
State of the Union.
Well, that
we'll set it up where you ask us questions.
Little tastes, little flavors, little open up some like rare Calusa beers and make everyone jealous.
Absolutely. Taylor, why don't you, speaking of Calusa beers, where can we find more about Calusa on the social medias?
Oh, everywhere, man. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Calusa Brewing. Hit us up if you have any questions. I'm always on there. I respond back promptly. And
do you guys have a posted tap list anywhere?
Yeah, on our website, you can find our, in real time, the tap list, what's available in the cooler, and pretty much anything you need to know. The freaking food trucks, our hours. A lot of people call and ask for that for some reason, but our hours are on the website. So
awesome, fantastic. Thank you guys again for being here. Again, you can follow Calusa on social media at Calusa Brewing. And of course, you can find BSN on all those social media platforms at BSN Podcast, and then on Twitter it's BSN with BK. Thanks, guys. Again, we're gonna lead you out with a little song that was on my show the last episode with Justin Lehman, a song that he had previously unreleased until that episode. It's called Dance. Thank you guys, appreciate it.